The fastest way to lose your future is to underestimate the person standing one place behind you. By the beginning of junior year at Westbridge University, everyone already knew the two names that dominated every classroom, every competition, and every conversation about academic excellence: Ethan Carter and Noah Bennett. If one finished first, the other finished second. If one won a scholarship, the other came within a fraction of a point. Professors compared them. Students argued about them. Freshmen whispered stories as if they were campus legends instead of ordinary 21-year-olds carrying backpacks across the same brick walkways every morning. Ethan preferred silence, schedules, and control. His planner was organized down to the minute, his notes color-coded, his goals mapped years into the future. Becoming valedictorian wasn't simply a dream. It was a promise he had made to himself after years of sacrificing parties, vacations, and almost everything that looked remotely fun. Noah, on the other hand, looked like someone who never studied at all. He laughed too easily, joked with professors, remembered everyone's names, and somehow still managed to score almost exactly the same grades as Ethan. That irritated Ethan more than he would ever admit. Nothing about Noah made sense. Nobody should be able to smile that much while carrying the same impossible workload. Every Monday morning, the updated department rankings appeared on a large digital screen inside the business school lobby. Crowds always gathered before the first lecture, waiting for the newest results. Today was no different. Ethan arrived 5 minutes early, coffee in one hand and his tablet in the other, expecting another ordinary morning. Instead, he found dozens of students staring upward in complete silence. The screen refreshed. Rank 1, Noah Bennett. Rank 2, Ethan Carter. The difference? 0.03. A whisper rolled through the crowd before exploding into conversations. Someone applauded. Someone else laughed nervously. Ethan didn't move. He simply stared at the numbers, rereading them as if persistence alone could change reality. Then he heard footsteps approaching. "Looks like I finally got lucky," Noah said with a grin that somehow managed to sound humble instead of arrogant. Ethan looked at him for the first time that morning. "Luck usually doesn't survive finals," he answered calmly. Several students exchanged nervous glances. Everyone expected another verbal duel. Noah folded his arms, amusement flickering across his face. "Good. I'd hate for this to get boring." Neither of them smiled, but neither looked away either. It felt less like a conversation and more like two chess players making their opening moves before an audience. Professor Harrison happened to walk past at that exact moment, stopping just long enough to observe the silent tension between them. "Excellent," he said. "Competition creates excellence. Just remember that someday your greatest rival might become your greatest ally." Ethan dismissed the comment immediately. Noah chuckled softly. Neither believed such a thing was possible. As students drifted toward class, Ethan remained standing beneath the glowing rankings for one extra second. Losing first place by 0.03 of a point wasn't simply disappointing. It felt personal. Across the lobby, Noah glanced back once before disappearing into the hallway. He couldn't explain why, but defeating Ethan hadn't felt nearly as satisfying as he had imagined. Somewhere beneath the applause, the rankings, and the endless race for perfection, something had shifted, though neither of them was ready to recognize it. They still believed this year would be decided by grades alone. They had no idea the hardest test waiting for them wouldn't appear on any final exam. The truth has a strange way of choosing the worst possible moment to reveal itself. 3 days after the rankings changed, the atmosphere across Westbridge University had become even more divided. Students argued between classes, social media pages filled with endless debates, and professors quietly admitted that they had never seen two students push each other this hard. Ethan ignored every comment. He convinced himself that the only thing that mattered was reclaiming the top position before graduation. Everything else was noise. That determination carried him into Professor Harrison's Advanced Business Strategy lecture on Friday morning. The classroom buzzed with unusual excitement as the professor walked to the front carrying a stack of sealed folders. Without saying a word, he placed them neatly across his desk before turning toward the class with an expression that instantly silenced every whisper. "This semester," he announced, "our department has been selected to represent the university in the National Innovation Challenge. The winning team will receive full graduate fellowships, paid internships with Fortune 500 companies, and national recognition. Every student leaned forward. Professor Harrison allowed the anticipation to settle before continuing. There is one condition. You will not choose your own teammates. A ripple of nervous laughter spread across the room. Ethan remained calm until the professor began reading names. Team after team was announced. Friends were separated. Rivals found themselves sitting beside one another. Then came the final pairing. Ethan Carter and Noah Bennett. The room erupted. Some students laughed openly, while others exchanged wide-eyed looks. Someone in the back whispered, "This is going to be a disaster." Ethan looked toward the professor, certain there had been a mistake. "There has to be another option," he said, his voice controlled but unmistakably firm. Noah raised one eyebrow. "For once, we actually agree." Professor Harrison folded his arms. "Exactly why you are together." Ethan exhaled slowly. "We have completely different approaches." "Which is precisely the point." Noah crossed his arms. "You realize one of us is going to end up doing all the work." Ethan answered without hesitation. "I was thinking the same thing." Several classmates struggled to hide their laughter. Professor Harrison simply smiled. "You both have exceptional records. You both think your method is the only correct one. This project is not only about business strategy. It is about leadership, adaptability, and trust. If either of you refuses to participate, you will both forfeit eligibility for the competition." Silence settled over the classroom. Ethan hated ultimatums. Noah hated losing opportunities. They had no choice. After class, they walked out of the building several steps apart, neither willing to speak first. Finally, Noah stopped near the fountain outside the business school. "Ground rules," he said. Ethan looked at him cautiously. "Fine. No personal attacks." "Agreed. Every decision has to make sense, not just satisfy your ego." Ethan almost smiled despite himself. "That rule applies to both of us." Noah extended his hand. Temporary truce. Ethan stared at the offered handshake for several seconds. Accepting it felt strangely difficult, almost as if acknowledging Noah as an equal would somehow weaken his own resolve. Yet walking away would only make the project harder. At last, he shook Noah's hand. It lasted barely 2 seconds before they both stepped back. Neither noticed Professor Harrison watching from the second-floor window with quiet satisfaction. He had seen enough generations of students to recognize something they could not. Sometimes the strongest partnerships began with the fiercest competition. As Ethan and Noah headed toward the library to schedule their first planning session, each privately promised the same thing: work together if necessary. Trust each other never. Neither realized that promise would become impossible to keep. The first crack in every rivalry appears long before either side is willing to admit it. By Monday afternoon, Ethan and Noah sat across from each other in one of the private study rooms inside Westbridge University's library, surrounded by open laptops, notebooks, and enough research articles to overwhelm most students. They had agreed to meet at exactly 2 o'clock. Ethan arrived at 1:55. Noah walked in at 1:58 carrying 2 coffees. Without saying a word, he placed one on Ethan's side of the table before taking his seat. Ethan glanced at the cup. "I did not ask for this." Noah shrugged. "I know. You also look like someone who forgot to eat lunch." Ethan hesitated for a second before quietly moving the coffee closer. "Thank you." It was the first civil exchange either of them could remember. It lasted less than a minute. Ethan opened a presentation outline that contained a detailed 12-week production schedule. Every milestone was color-coded, every deadline carefully calculated. Noah studied it before leaning back in his chair. "It is impressive." Ethan nodded once. "It is efficient." Noah smiled politely. "It is also completely unrealistic." Ethan looked up immediately. "Explain." Noah rotated his laptop so Ethan could see several market reports. "You planned every step before talking to a single customer. If we build our entire project on assumptions, we could spend weeks solving the wrong problem." Ethan crossed his arms. "Research comes first. Interviews waste time without structure." Noah shook his head. "Real people create the structure." The conversation quickly transformed into another debate. Ethan believed discipline produced results. Noah believed flexibility discovered opportunities. Neither viewpoint was unreasonable, but neither wanted to surrender even an inch. Hours passed while ideas were challenged, revised, rejected, and rebuilt. More than once, students walking past the glass walls slowed down just to watch the 2 top competitors argue over charts, surveys, and financial models with almost unbelievable intensity. Late in the afternoon, Professor Harrison quietly stepped inside. He listened for several minutes without interrupting. Finally, he asked a single question. "Which one of you has changed your opinion today?" Silence answered him. Ethan looked toward his notes. Noah stared at the whiteboard. Professor Harrison smiled knowingly. "Then neither of you has learned anything." With that, he walked away. The words lingered long after he disappeared. For the first time that day, neither Ethan nor Noah rushed to defend a position. Noah broke the silence. "What if we stop trying to prove who is smarter?" Ethan looked unconvinced. "What do you suggest?" Noah opened a blank page on his laptop. "Forget rankings. Forget grades. Let us spend tomorrow interviewing local business owners instead of debating theories. If your research is right, the interviews will prove it. If I am right, we will discover something neither of us expected." Ethan tapped his pen thoughtfully. It was not the plan he would have chosen, yet he could not deny the logic behind it. After several seconds, he gave a slow nod. "One day." Noah grinned. "One day is all I am asking." They packed their bags as the library lights automatically dimmed for the evening. Walking toward the parking lot, they found themselves discussing favorite professors instead of competition. Then favorite classes. Then, surprisingly, favorite childhood books. The conversation felt strangely effortless until they both noticed they had reached the same intersection outside campus. They stopped almost at the same time, suddenly aware that they had been talking like ordinary classmates instead of lifelong rivals. An awkward silence settled between them before Noah laughed softly. "Do not worry. I still plan to beat you." Ethan unexpectedly answered with the faintest smile. "You are welcome to try." Neither realized that the hardest part of working together was no longer the project itself. It was accepting how natural the partnership was beginning to feel. Sometimes the smallest discovery changes everything, not because it answers a question, but because it forces two people to ask entirely different ones. The next morning, Ethan and Noah drove 30 miles to the small downtown business district that had been selected for their field research. Their assignment sounded simple enough. Interview local business owners, identify challenges facing independent companies, and build an innovation proposal around real experiences instead of classroom theories. Ethan arrived carrying a neatly organized folder filled with prepared questions, demographic data, and a strict interview schedule. Noah carried only a notebook, a recorder, and an easy smile that immediately put people at ease. Within the first hour, Ethan noticed something he could not ignore. Every business owner responded politely to his carefully structured questions, but the conversations remained short and formal. When Noah spoke, however, people relaxed. They laughed. They shared stories that were never part of the original questionnaire. One elderly bookstore owner even disappeared into a back office before returning with old photographs showing how the neighborhood had changed over 20 years. None of that information could be found in financial reports or online databases. As they stepped outside, Ethan looked through pages of notes with quiet surprise. "You never asked about sales numbers," he said. Noah smiled. "People usually tell you the numbers after they trust you enough to tell you the story." Ethan considered that answer while writing several observations into his notebook. For the first time, he admitted to himself that Noah possessed a strength no textbook could teach. Their final interview took place at a family-owned coffee shop preparing to celebrate its 50th anniversary. The owner explained that business had declined despite excellent customer reviews because younger customers rarely discovered the store. Ethan immediately began suggesting marketing strategies, but Noah interrupted with an unexpected question. "Why have you never changed the interior?" The owner looked around the cafe before quietly admitting that every chair, every painting, and every table reminded him of his late wife, who had helped open the shop decades earlier. A gentle silence settled over the room. Ethan slowly closed his laptop. Suddenly, the problem was no longer about advertising. It was about preserving memories while embracing the future. As they walked back toward the parking lot, Noah finally spoke. "Business decisions are usually emotional before they become logical." Ethan looked ahead without answering right away. "I spent years believing the opposite." Noah laughed softly. "I know." During the drive back to campus, rain began falling across the highway. Traffic slowed, giving them far more time together than either had expected. Instead of discussing the competition, they talked about childhood dreams. Ethan admitted that he had once wanted to become an architect before discovering economics in high school. Noah confessed that he had nearly chosen music because he loved playing the piano, but his family encouraged business instead. The conversation felt unexpectedly honest, as if the steady rhythm of rain outside had washed away some invisible barrier between them. When they finally returned to campus, Ethan reached for his backpack before noticing Noah sitting unusually still behind the steering wheel. "Everything all right?" he asked. Noah looked toward the science building across the parking lot. "Today was the first time I forgot we were supposed to be rivals." Ethan did not answer immediately because he had realized the same thing halfway through the afternoon. Instead, he stepped out of the car and paused before closing the door. "Do not get used to it," he said with a calm expression that failed to hide the faint smile in his eyes. Noah watched him walk across the rain-soaked sidewalk and quietly smiled to himself, unaware that somewhere nearby another student had photographed the two of them arriving together, and by sunset the image would spread across campus, giving everyone a reason to question the rivalry they had always believed was impossible to change. Rumors spread much faster than the truth, especially when people are desperate to believe what they think they see. By the following morning, the photo of Ethan and Noah stepping out of the same car had reached nearly every student at Westbridge University. Some believed the rivals had secretly formed an alliance to dominate the competition. Others insisted the partnership would collapse within days. Neither rumor bothered Ethan nearly as much as the unexpected feeling that he no longer cared what everyone else believed. As he entered the business building, conversations softened around him before quickly changing subjects. Noah caught up a few moments later, carrying his usual coffee with another cup balanced in his free hand. Without asking, he offered it to Ethan again. This time, Ethan accepted immediately. Noah laughed. "Progress." Ethan took a sip before replying. "Do not make too much of it." Yet even he noticed how natural the exchange had become. Their project continued to evolve as interview after interview revealed patterns they had never expected. Instead of competing over whose ideas were better, they started combining them. Ethan organized complex research into clear strategies while Noah transformed those strategies into practical solutions that real business owners could understand. Professor Harrison reviewed their latest draft late that afternoon and remained unusually quiet until he reached the final page. Then he slowly looked up. "This does not read like two students fighting over control anymore," he said. "It reads like one team." Ethan and Noah exchanged a brief glance before looking away almost at the same time. Neither knew how to respond. After class, they stopped by the campus cafe to revise several charts before the next deadline. The line stretched almost to the entrance because of a charity fundraiser organized by the student council. Noah greeted volunteers by name as if he had known them for years. Ethan watched quietly from behind. Everywhere they went, Noah somehow made people feel comfortable without even trying. It was a talent Ethan had spent years overlooking because he had been too focused on measuring success with numbers instead of relationships. While waiting for their drinks, Noah noticed Ethan staring through the window at students crossing the courtyard. "What are you thinking?" he asked. Ethan answered more honestly than he intended. "I think I spent too much time trying to beat you and not enough time trying to understand you." Noah looked genuinely surprised before smiling with unusual sincerity. "That might be the nicest thing you have ever said to me." Ethan shook his head with quiet embarrassment. "Do not expect a second compliment today." They carried their drinks outside and found an empty bench beneath a row of maple trees just beginning to show the first colors of early fall. The afternoon breeze scattered a few leaves across the sidewalk while students hurried between classes. For several peaceful minutes, neither of them spoke. The silence no longer felt uncomfortable. It felt familiar. Then Noah glanced at Ethan with a thoughtful expression. "Can I ask you something?" Ethan nodded. "When you lost first place, were you angry because you lost, or because it was me who passed you?" Ethan considered the question carefully. Months ago, he would have answered without hesitation. Now the truth felt more complicated. "At first, I thought it was about the ranking," he admitted quietly. "Now I think I was frustrated because you made me question everything I believed about success." Noah looked down at his coffee before answering. "You did the same thing to me." Neither realized how much those words mattered until their phones vibrated almost simultaneously. An email from the National Innovation Challenge Committee had arrived. Their proposal had advanced to the final round, but the message ended with one unexpected sentence. All finalist teams would undergo an academic integrity review before presenting. Ethan read the line twice. Noah did the same. Neither of them knew that a simple administrative notice was about to become the beginning of the greatest test either had ever faced. The strongest partnerships are not tested when everything is going well, but when doubt quietly enters the room before either person notices it. Ethan read the email a third time as he and Noah walked toward Professor Harrison's office. The phrase academic integrity review sounded routine, yet something about it felt unusually serious. Professor Harrison welcomed them inside, accepted a printed copy of their proposal, and listened carefully as they described every interview, survey, and recommendation they had completed over the past several weeks. When they finished, he folded his hands and gave them an approving nod. "Your work is exceptional," he said. "That is exactly why it will receive more attention than every other project." Ethan frowned slightly. "You think someone will challenge it?" Professor Harrison answered with calm honesty. "Success always attracts questions. Do not fear being examined. Fear giving people a reason to doubt your character." His words stayed with them long after they left the office. Over the next several days, they reviewed every source, verified every interview transcript, and checked every citation twice. Ethan's attention to detail uncovered several formatting errors that could have created unnecessary confusion, while Noah contacted every business owner again to confirm permission for using their stories in the final presentation. What had once felt like two separate working styles had become one seamless process. Without discussing it, each naturally handled the tasks the other respected most. Late one evening, the nearly empty library became their second home. Outside, the campus had grown quiet, and only the soft hum of overhead lights interrupted the silence. Noah stretched after hours of editing slides and looked toward Ethan, who was still comparing financial projections line by line. "You know," Noah said with a tired smile, "a month ago I thought working with you would be impossible." Ethan looked up from his screen. "I had exactly the same opinion." Noah laughed. "Funny how wrong we both were." Ethan allowed himself a genuine smile, one that appeared so naturally it surprised even him. "Perhaps we judged each other before we understood each other." For a brief moment, neither returned to work. Instead, they simply sat across from one another, sharing a comfortable silence that no longer required constant conversation. Ethan realized he had begun looking forward to these evenings, not because of the competition, but because Noah somehow made every impossible deadline feel manageable. Across the table, Noah noticed the familiar crease of concentration disappear from Ethan's forehead whenever they talked about something unrelated to grades or rankings. It was a version of Ethan almost no one else had ever seen. As midnight approached, Noah quietly stood and walked toward the vending machines. He returned carrying 2 chocolate bars and placed one beside Ethan's laptop. Ethan looked puzzled. "I thought you only bought coffee." Noah shrugged with a grin. "Even perfection needs sugar sometimes." Ethan laughed before he could stop himself. The sound echoed softly through the empty study room, and both of them froze for a second. It was the first time either had heard Ethan laugh without restraint. Noah smiled, not teasing him this time, simply appreciating the moment. Before either could say another word, Ethan's phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. Attached was a single photograph showing their proposal draft lying open on a library table earlier that afternoon. Beneath the image were only 9 words. "Someone knows more about your project than you think." Ethan and Noah exchanged uneasy glances. They had left the room together that afternoon. Neither remembered leaving the proposal unattended. For the first time since becoming teammates, the challenge standing before them no longer felt like an academic competition. Somewhere on campus, someone had started paying very close attention to everything they were doing. Secrets rarely announce themselves. They wait patiently until trust has become valuable enough to lose. Ethan barely slept after receiving the anonymous message. By sunrise, he had reviewed every version of their proposal, every shared document, and every folder they had created since the project began. Nothing appeared missing. Nothing had been changed. Yet the photograph proved someone had access to material that should have remained private. When Noah arrived outside the business building that morning, he immediately recognized the exhaustion on Ethan's face. "You were up all night, were not you?" Ethan quietly nodded. "I kept thinking I overlooked something." Noah folded his arms thoughtfully before answering. "Then let us stop guessing and start eliminating possibilities." Instead of attending the campus coffee shop as they usually did, They reserved a small conference room equipped with access logs for student research projects. Working side by side, they carefully traced every moment their proposal had been opened, printed, or shared. The records showed no unauthorized digital access. Whoever had taken the photograph had most likely done it in person. That realization made the room feel noticeably smaller. "Someone has been watching us," Ethan said quietly. Noah looked toward the closed door before lowering his voice. "Then we keep working exactly as we always have. If someone wants us distracted, we do not give them what they want." Ethan studied Noah for a moment. Months ago, he would have dismissed that advice as overly optimistic. Now he found himself trusting it almost immediately. The rest of the afternoon passed inside rehearsal rooms as they practiced their presentation repeatedly, refining transitions until every section flowed naturally. More than once, Professor Harrison stopped by to observe without interrupting. Finally, after listening to an entire rehearsal, he smiled with unmistakable pride. "I no longer hear two separate voices," he said. "I hear one story told by two people who understand it equally well." His words stayed with Ethan long after practice ended. That evening, while leaving the academic building, Noah noticed Ethan slowing his pace near the courtyard fountain where they had first accepted their uneasy partnership weeks earlier. "Something on your mind?" Noah asked. Ethan looked across the quiet campus, where lights from the library reflected softly against the evening sky. "Do you remember when we agreed to trust each other never?" Noah laughed under his breath. "I remember." Ethan took a slow breath before speaking again. "I think we accidentally broke that agreement." Noah remained silent for several seconds, his usual quick humor replaced by genuine thoughtfulness. "I think we did," he admitted. Neither of them seemed uncomfortable with the confession. In fact, it felt strangely relieving. They continued walking until they reached the student parking lot, where Noah suddenly stopped beside his car. "There is something I have never told anyone here," he said quietly. Ethan turned toward him without speaking. "The graduate fellowship attached to this competition is not just another achievement for me. Without it, I cannot afford graduate school next year." Ethan absorbed those words in silence. For the first time, the competition was no longer an abstract goal. It carried the weight of someone's future. Before he could respond, headlights swept across the parking lot as campus security slowly drove past. A folded envelope lying beneath Noah's windshield wiper caught Ethan's attention. Noah picked it up, opened it carefully, and felt the color leave his face. Inside was a printed copy of one page from their proposal with a single sentence typed across the bottom. "Withdraw before the final presentation, or everyone will learn what really happened." Ethan looked at Noah in disbelief. Noah looked back with the same unanswered question. Neither of them understood what the message meant, but both knew their greatest challenge had only just begun. The greatest choice is never between winning and losing. It is between protecting your future and protecting the person who has become part of it. Neither Ethan nor Noah spoke during the drive back to campus after finding the anonymous note. The silence was heavier than any argument they had ever shared. Once inside the empty business building, they spread every document across a conference table, comparing the printed page from the envelope with their original proposal. The content was identical. There were no edits, no hidden messages, no clues about who had taken it. Ethan leaned back and closed his eyes for a moment. "The note says everyone will learn what really happened," he said quietly. "What does that even mean?" Noah stared at the paper before answering. "I do not know, but I know one thing. We have nothing to hide." Ethan wanted to believe those words, yet doubt had already begun spreading across campus. The following morning confirmed his fears. Several students stopped talking the moment he entered the hallway. Others looked at Noah with quiet sympathy instead of admiration. Someone had started another anonymous rumor online claiming that the finalists had received unfair assistance during the competition. No names were mentioned directly, but everyone understood exactly who the rumors targeted. Professor Harrison called them into his office before lunch. His expression remained calm, but more serious than either of them had ever seen. "The review committee has received an anonymous complaint," he explained. "There is no evidence supporting it, but they are required to investigate before tomorrow's final presentation." Ethan immediately offered every research file, interview recording, and planning document they had created. Noah did the same without hesitation. Professor Harrison accepted the materials with quiet confidence. I believe in both of you, he said. The committee will follow the evidence, not the rumors. His confidence should have been reassuring, yet the uncertainty outside his office only continued to grow. That evening, Ethan and Noah returned to the library for what might have been their final preparation session. Instead of practicing slides, they simply sat together watching rain slide across the tall windows. After several minutes, Noah broke the silence. If the committee decides to remove us, promise me something. Ethan turned toward him. What? Noah took a slow breath. Do not give up your future trying to defend mine. Ethan answered almost immediately. That is not going to happen. Noah smiled sadly. You cannot promise that. Ethan looked directly into Noah's eyes, speaking more honestly than he ever had before. Then let me promise something else. I am not walking away from this. Not from the project, and not from you. Noah froze. The words settled quietly between them, carrying far more meaning than either was prepared to explain. He looked away first, not because he disagreed, but because he suddenly understood how much those words mattered. Before either of them could continue, Ethan's phone vibrated with an official email from the review committee. Their investigation had been completed earlier than expected. They were instructed to report to the auditorium first thing the next morning before the championship presentations began. No explanation was included. No result was mentioned. Ethan slowly lowered the phone. Noah searched his face for an answer that was not there. As they walked out of the library together beneath the dim campus lights, neither knew whether the next sunrise would mark the greatest achievement of their college lives or the moment everything they had worked for disappeared forever. The truth did not arrive with applause. It arrived with silence. The auditorium filled long before the scheduled presentations began. Finalist teams waited nervously while faculty members, judges, and students whispered about the investigation that had spread across campus. Ethan and Noah stood together outside the review committee room, neither speaking because there was nothing left to say. They had already handed over every interview recording, every draft, every research note, and every message connected to their project. Whatever happened next would no longer be decided by preparation. At precisely 8 o'clock, the committee chair invited them inside. Professor Harrison waited quietly near the back of the room, his calm expression revealing nothing. The chair reviewed the anonymous allegations one final time before placing a thin folder on the table. After examining every document and interviewing each participating business owner, she said, "We found no evidence of academic misconduct. Every claim submitted against your team has been determined to be false." Ethan slowly released a breath he had not realized he had been holding. Noah lowered his head for a moment, relief washing across his face. The chair continued. The anonymous complaint originated from another finalist who believed your partnership gave you an unfair advantage. That student has accepted responsibility, apologized, and withdrawn from the competition. No celebration followed those words. Instead, Ethan found himself thinking about how easily fear and jealousy could have destroyed months of honest work. A short time later, the championship presentations began. When Ethan and Noah walked onto the stage together, the audience no longer saw two rivals standing side by side. They saw two partners whose confidence came not from perfection, but from complete trust in one another. Their presentation was clear, thoughtful, and deeply human because it was built upon the real stories of people they had taken the time to understand. When the judges announced the winners, Westbridge University's auditorium erupted in applause. Their team had earned first place, the graduate fellowships, and the opportunity to represent the university at the national level. Cameras flashed across the room as classmates rushed forward to congratulate them. Yet amid all the excitement, neither Ethan nor Noah looked at the trophy first. They looked at each other. Later that evening, after the celebration had ended and campus had grown quiet once again, they returned to the familiar fountain where everything between them had truly begun. The rankings displayed inside the business building no longer mattered. The competition that had once defined every conversation now felt strangely distant. Noah smiled as he looked across the peaceful campus. "Do you remember the first day we stood here?" Ethan nodded. "I remember believing you were the one obstacle standing between me and the future I wanted." Noah laughed softly. "And now?" Ethan met his eyes without hesitation. "Now I know you were the reason I found a better future than the one I planned." Noah stood speechless for a heartbeat before taking one careful step closer. I spent so much time trying to prove I could beat you, he admitted quietly. Somewhere along the way, I stopped caring about winning. I just wanted to keep walking beside you. Ethan smiled with the quiet confidence he had spent years searching for. Then do not stop. Noah reached for Ethan's hand, and this time there was no audience, no ranking, and no competition waiting for them. There was only the simple certainty that some victories could never be measured by grades, trophies, or titles. 2 years later, they returned to Westbridge University as invited guest speakers, sharing the story of collaboration, resilience, and integrity with a new generation of students. The digital ranking board still greeted every class each Monday morning, but whenever young students asked how two legendary rivals had become an unforgettable team, Ethan and Noah always smiled before giving the same answer. The greatest success of their college years was never finishing at the top. It was discovering that the person they had once tried hardest to defeat had quietly become the person they could never imagine leaving behind.